And on my way out the door, they said, by the way, we know we owe you a bunch of money, but we're not going to pay you. Come and get it. And I'm like, I said, I think you forgot one of the reasons you bought our company. Oh, what's that? And I said, I never fucking give up, and you're going to pay us.
On Creative Assembly's The Spark podcast, our mission is to amplify Nashville's diverse creative voices, foster growth through shared journeys, and inspire a city that thrives on collaboration. And now, here's The Spark.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Spark. I'm Mark Scrivener, your host, and today I am joined by a famous entrepreneur from Nashville, Mark Montgomery. Man, you've been around for a long time, and you've helped so many businesses, as I've watched along the way. Investor, entrepreneur, and longtime Nashville business owner.
Catalyst, troublemaker, whatever you want to call it. Good to be with you, Mark.
Well, Mark, it is great to have you on. It's an honor. I really appreciate you making time for us and the audience. And maybe just to kick us off, man, when did you figure out that you probably were better suited working for yourself than maybe working for somebody else? Because you've been in a lot of your own startups throughout the years.
Well, so I guess there was a moment. So when I moved here with $800 to be a session guitar player.
Okay.
Bad idea, horrible idea. One of many of my horrible ideas. And so when I realized that was a huge mistake, I went to work for a guy named Jimmy Lenahan, Sr., and I started sweeping the floor. And I wanted to be in the music business, right? And that's a whole other conversation about that. But I needed a day job, so I started sweeping the floor of the warehouse. And then about 4 months later, I became a bin loop mastering engineer. So I worked the second shift making, back in the day, cassette masters. Didn't know how to do it. Learned, right, which is a hallmark of kind of troublemakers like us, right? Mm-hmm. You just figure it out as you go. And a couple months, I was there for probably 6 months, and I'm watching what they're doing, and I'm like, I can probably sell what we're doing. And at the time, what they were doing was CDs were brand new, and they were telling their customers, so they make cassettes. Well, would you like some CDs? And so I was watching this, and I'm recognizing, number one, they aren't making them. They're bringing them in from Canada, and then they're assembling them, but they're making them. Mm-hmm. And they had a head of sales who was, so I went to the boss and I said, hey, I think I can sell this. So can I do this along with my other stuff? And they're like, sure. So pretty quickly, I could. And pretty quickly, I realized that I was outselling the head of sales. And I kind of... I was okay having the gig, but I was also not okay with the fact that I was still riding the city bus and the head of sales was driving a Jaguar. And so I went to the boss and I said, hey, I think I made a bad deal and we need to change the deal. And he's like, you can go make love to yourself. So I did. I quit on the spot.
Wow.
And I bought a Mac Color Classic, which I still own and still works. And I ran an 800 number into my apartment, and I started competing against them because I figured out they weren't really touching any of it. They were only packaging this final product. And this is back in the day when when the margins on those deals were huge. They were enormous. And that was the last time I worked for anybody until we sold to Live Nation. And then I went back inside as a EVP of I can't even remember. Yeah. I had a 5-year earnout, and I lasted 2.5 years. I didn't do well working for other people. I talk back. I have my own opinions. It just didn't work out.
That's how I first got to know you. Was just know of you actually was through Echo Music. I mean, you built a pretty substantial, what maybe back then you would have thought is a digital agency back in the day.
That was a component. It's interesting. Paramore Red was the first digital agency in town. Okay. And Kid Red actually became my partner later in Flow.
Okay.
So they kind of own the title of first digital agency. What we did is bolted on agency services to what was sort of an underlying SaaS platform that when we exited the business in 2007, was the second largest database of music consumers in the world. We had built Salesforce before Salesforce existed, and it was focused on music. So like if I had been not so intently focused on remaking the music business, I had been able to go like this and go, oh, you know what, abstractly, this probably works for a lot of other kinds of businesses. It might have been Salesforce, but it wasn't. And we, you know, it was for me, the passion there of building that came out of launching direct-to-consumer sales of CDs on the public internet in the mid-'90s. So I had this moment. We were solving our own the hallmark of entrepreneurs are they're solving their own problem, and I saw this problem and felt like there was a solution to it. And back in the day, Telelink, remember those guys? They were running this internet service business, and I kind of convinced them that we should enable e-commerce. And we were their client, and Scott Sears in particular would attest to me standing on their desk all the time, like, when are we going to get this done? And on April 20th at midnight, we launched this direct-to-consumer basically platform for a band called the Floating Men. Remember those guys? And we sat there for the first 2 hours, and I watched these orders pour in. And this is back in like the mid-'90s. They were running ads in newspapers, magazines. Don't put your credit card on the internet. And we're watching these orders come in, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck this is, but this is what I'm going to do. And you could just see the disintermediation, and you taking the supply chain from here to here, and that for me was really the next 20 plus years of my career was working against that problem. Yeah. And those building that business for me was kind of in retrospect. There were a lot of lessons in it, from starting with 3 people to going to over 100 with offices in 5 cities, going from working with, and I love some of the artists that we started with, Guy Clark, and some of these amazing sort of heroes, and then moving up the chain to Bon Jovi and Kiss, and working with these huge artists, and sitting in meetings. I sat in this meeting with at the time a guy named Leor Cohen, who was the head of Warner, and trying to help these purported brilliant business people understand that the internet was not their enemy. Right? If there was a moment in the music business where they were, well, let me put it this way. Legislation and litigation of your customers is a bad plan, right? Suing your customers, hello, what? But they had a completely different mindset. So it was a really interesting moment in time. And I was really lucky to kind of be in and around a lot of that disruption. And it's interesting, there's a lot of folks in this community who were part of that. Like Sam Saturn jumps to mind. You should have Sam on. Like that period was a really interesting moment. And I think we were all believers in what the promise of the internet. Turns out perhaps that promise is maybe not quite as interesting as we thought it was. But nonetheless, that period was a tremendous time of learning. I was really proud of the group of people we put together. I loved our clients. I brought Alison Krauss on the internet. Like, I got to do some really cool shit. And under the guise of, there was this perception of what we were versus what we were actually building and doing.
Yeah. You mentioned, so many people that went on and did other things. And I was going to say, I don't know if, you came to town, musician, $800, you started this company. And I don't know if you're just really good at hiring people or you develop these people. But, out of that Echo Music, I saw so many people that are, that went and made big names for themselves.
That's my greatest source of pride.
Yeah.
Right. And And I think the answer was, it was both. I think we were really good at hiring. You know, it's interesting. I was talking to a founder, a friend of mine that I'm working with right now, and when you make the first hire that's making more money than you, you've really sort of arrived in that spot. Because if you're doing it right, you as the founder have more to gain at the end, and it's your job to bring people around you that are smarter than you. As soon as you recognize that your success will be tied to the success of the people around you, and for a long time, frankly, it wasn't. I had a huge ego. I wanted it to be all about me. And there was a period where I recognized that I was becoming the limiting factor, and we started making better hires. And like I think about, I mean, there's just too many out of that crew. Annie Ortmeyer jumps to mind, who's gone on to do amazing. It's just a really interesting group of people, and recognizing that my job was to put the team in a position to be successful, and that's really your role as you know, when you go from 3 people to 15 people to 25 people to 45, there's these cultural cuts, and you as the leader need to adjust your behavior to help facilitate the growth of the business. And I was lucky to have mentors around me who were willing to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you need to. This is a moment where there's going to be a cultural shift." I owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to a woman named Liz Allen Fay, who became. She wrote my first strategic plan in 1999, and I see her every quarter. She's retired, but she's kept me. I don't even know if I'm a client anymore. We're just friends, but she still advises me, and she has really seen me through every season. You know, when you make that transition from founder to CEO, that's a big shift. And then when we sold, that was a big shift. And if you're doing it right, you're taking what you've learned back here and bringing it forward. And then you're also discarding the things that didn't serve you well. And it is truly a journey. Like, I mean, you're in the same boat.
You're exactly right. Yeah, I was actually going to ask, just because as we start to get into the show, I mean, you've left there and you've helped so many entrepreneurs along the way. I know you mentor a lot of people, and I was actually going to ask you who your mentor was. So I assume Liz Allen Fay.
So Liz Allen Fay was a big one. Frank Bumstead, who's passed on, who ran one of the partners at Flood, Bumstead, McCready, McCarthy. Man, I just have a whole bunch. I consider myself really lucky to have had the folks around me that I have, and I've continued to seek people out that have what I want. That for me, some of that has changed as I have gotten older and had some of the things that have happened to me in life. When you sit in a room with death, and I've done it twice. I was there when I helped my wife move on, and then I helped my mother move on within a couple years after. You start to recognize that what you were hanging your hat on, what you thought was important, isn't really that important. That, and then having a daughter really woke me up, and so my mentors now are more spiritual in nature. I'm not a religious man, but I consider myself to be a spiritual man. And, I've developed a pretty strong meditation practice, and I'm in the middle of reading the Upanishads, and I'm reading a lot of Marcus Aurelius, and recognizing that this is a river, and it goes past very fast, and it's never the same again. And that we're all, Marcus Aurelius says, it's my favorite quote I've found of his so far. We're all rotting bags of meat. It's like,
wow.
Man. And you think about these things, you think about legacy, and and the reality is there's no such thing. right? And what you read this text, which in my mind is a journal to himself, and you recognize this is happening thousands of years ago, and it's like it was written for me today. So some things just don't really ever change. There are things changing, but in some ways things are very much the same as they've always been. And I've learned to take comfort in that a lot of this is just happening. And how it cuts and breaks and does what it's going to do is just part of the process, part of the logos, as he refers to it, this great consciousness that we all exist in.
Well, and I'm glad that you treaded into that. And, it was very impactful for me when I heard the news. And, I'm sure a lot of Nashville entrepreneurs. So I appreciate you speaking about it. And maybe we can talk about it a little more.
I'm happy to dig in
down the road. But I would just, you've mentored a ton of people. You've actually helped a lot of founders start up. And I guess I would ask you, what do you think is the mindset that it takes to build something from scratch? Because a lot of people want to either, hey, I want to raise a bunch of money from somebody and let me use somebody else's money, or it's like I want to step into something that's already successful. But what does it take the mindset to build something from scratch with nothing?
Well, what I would say is my favorite kind of definition comes from Yvon Chouinard, who founded Patagonia. Still owns it, privately held, B Corp. Weirdly, I don't know if you are familiar with that whole thing. That's a side road we can go down. But Yvon describes the entrepreneur as a juvenile delinquent, right? We are solving a problem that we're outraged about. It's a problem that we see and we want to solve it. And it's that thing that is sort of intrinsic that you're looking for. You're looking for a troublemaker. You're looking for somebody with a chip on their shoulder, something to prove. Someone who's not afraid to jump off a cliff. Someone who has no plan B. Those are kind of hallmarks. If you're that isn't a guarantee, but it's certainly a good indicator that the raw material is there. And then the other big thing, and I just watched an interview with Sam Davison, who if you haven't had on, you should have on. The other big piece of it then is coachability, right? And not so much that they're just going wherever they're being coached to go, but enough that they're willing to take the input, even if the interaction is uncomfortable, and even if it takes a minute for them to come back and go, okay, I see what you're saying, but coachability has to be in there. And I think if you have the right mix of those things, you have all the potential. Then you can't. Then the rest of it's the market, right?
Yeah.
And you can't really control any of that.
All very, very good points. I mean, I always say burn your ships. You said there's no plan B, but it's like, hey, you burnt your ships. There's nowhere to go back to, versus some entrepreneurs that say, well, I'm going to try this out nights and on the weekends. It'll be a little side hustle for me.
And nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
But the other side of that is in order to really do it, you have to be both boots in.
Yeah.
You can't really half-ass that part of the work. It just has to happen.
You probably watched Sam Davidson on my show. So
I might have. Yeah.
He was here. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he's so great. I'm a huge
doing
fan.
good stuff for
he is.
Nashville community too. So you've seen a ton of ideas over the years, good ones, bad ones. What do you think? What's the difference between a good idea and maybe a great one that you go, man, this has a lot of opportunity?
Well, what I would say is some of that it honestly is geographic in nature, right? So I don't think I spent in kind of the early 2000s. I spent a ton of time in Silicon Valley, and the mindset there is just wildly different than it is here, right? And so the people with the really big, crazy ideas go there.
Yeah,
and not that we don't have good ideas here, and we do have some big ideas here, but they're fewer and farther between, because the things that help support those crazy ideas don't really exist here in the way that would be necessary for them to germinate here. You know, I got to be careful here.
I was going to ask you, what would it
Actually,
take?
I don't have to be careful.
Yeah.
What it would take is, I'm gonna go down a little side road. You stop me when we need to stop. If you look at the roots of Silicon Valley in the kind of the mid 60s, Silicon Valley was born out of a revolution, and it was born out of the psychedelic era. A lot of the guys at the front of that were tripping their balls off on LSD. They were opening doors in their mind that created stuff like this.
Yeah.
Right? And that mentality coupled with the working cap. So I got to sit multiple times in rooms with guys like John Doerr, who funded Google, and like those guys don't think like the Nashville investor community, right? They're just a different breed. And so for me, and actually, when we sold the company in 2007, one of my mentors at the time was Michael Burcham. And Burcham said to me, he said, you got two choices at this point. You can pick your shit up and move to Silicon Valley and go play big boy ball, or you can stay here and become the king of Nashville. And I chose the latter because I had kind of deeply rooted myself here at that point. And I don't, we all have some degree of imposter syndrome. So there was a little bit of me going, I don't know if I want to go. Like that's a big fucking jump.
Yeah.
Pardon my French. And so some of it is truly geography. And if you look at the U.S. compared to the rest of the world, there just isn't the mentality that it takes to do what this is doesn't exist anywhere but here. And the home base, the kind of the epicenter of it, whether we like it or not, is the Valley. And you add to that, I mean, look at Y Combinator. You want to talk about the Mac Daddy accelerator on the planet, and where's it based? And you look around, who's involved in it? Paul Graham, and these guys are like, they're just another breed. And we don't have that level of crazy, and we don't have that level of tolerance for risk here. And so the idea that we could germinate that kind of opportunity, I think is just not that realistic. That doesn't mean we can't build the EC has been part of funding $300 million worth of deals, right? Like it can be done elsewhere, but you want to do the game changers, you got to go to the Valley, I think.
Yeah. Well, after you sold Echo Music and took some time, and I know you helped entrepreneurs for a little bit of time. We met at that point in
that's
time.
Right.
And as we were kicking Snapshot off, and so I appreciated all the support and help you gave, and ideas and thoughts, and then you, take us through that journey from there to, then I know you you started another business, Flowco.
Yeah. So I'll give you kind of I'll try to give you the shortcut version. So in 2006, I was in a set of meetings that birthed the notion of the Center for Entrepreneurship. Okay. And during that period, we were selling the business. I got an MBA in selling a company, and we built Echo out of cash until the last year. We had no outside investors until about 18 months before we sold the company. And when we sold the company, I wouldn't say we sold it accidentally. There was some intent underneath. But what we had done was actually hired an investment bank, and we were going to go raise a huge chunk of money and grow. Okay. And when we did that, the M&A offers started coming in. And at that point, I was in a partnership, a 50-50 partnership, which I would never recommend and never do again. And I wanted out. And so the choice was take more money, stay in this relationship, or sell the business and start over. And I chose the latter. So we sold the company, and I got my MBA there. Then about literally 4 months after we sold the company, we had signed up for this plan, which was basically we were building a replacement for record companies. And this is where Live Nation came in and Ticketmaster, and they were part of a holding company structure that was buying, I think they made 9 acquisitions during that period to string together a discovery to delivery ecosystem for music, which was the replacement for record companies. And so we bought into this idea. And during that time, I was continuing to work around the idea of how do we stand up some kind of center for entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And I'll land this plane, I promise. So after we sold the business, it wasn't 6 months. Hey, you need to get on a plane and come to LA. You're part of the Wooden Group. Okay, what's the Wooden Group? Well, you'll know when you get here. So,
nice.
Yeah, I didn't feel good about it. I get out there. I'm in this we're sitting in this auditorium. All the other founders of all these other companies that have rolled up we're all sitting together in a bunch of other corporate suits, and I'm like, this is not going to end well. And sure enough, hey guys, remember that plan we were going to do, that discovery to delivery plan? Yeah, we're not doing that anymore. That's all out the window. Instead, what we're going to do is this other thing. And so go back to your respective corners and we'll be in touch. And what they basically decided to do is to recap the holding company, which was called IAC. And they were going to spin out all these individual businesses. They owned 65 internet companies.
Wow.
And they were going to spin them all out. They were going to merge Live Nation and Ticketmaster. That deal had already been consummated. They were already working on it. So I went back to my respective corner and just kept whittling away at my work. And it became obvious that they were going to dismantle everything. And so then I got an MBA in getting fucked over by a multinational corporation. And so while that was happening, so basically they were going to do, and you take it really personally when you're in it. It wasn't personal. They were just doing what they were doing. Yeah. I was just in the way, me and a bunch of other people. And so as that was going on, they were beginning to start these conversations about the Center for Entrepreneurship. And so I ended up, it was Mike Schmerling, Bobby Frist, Clint Smith, me. There were probably 20 of us, right? And the people who had the biggest mouths, which in this case I did, ended up with big pieces of work. And so Bobby and Mike were kind of shaking the private capital markets to create this public-private partnership, which inevitably kind of enabled the EC. Yeah. And part of my work was looking at the best-in-class accelerators globally to see what should the model be. And there was a lot of argument around the table about who are we, who do we serve, right? And I think that argument has gone on the entire life of that entity. It's probably never going to be over. And so I was looking at Y Combinator and like these really amazing accelerator programs. And that idea was developing in my head while I was essentially, we mutually agreed 2.5 years into my deal that I would leave. So I had a 5-year earnout. 2.5 years in, we sort of both agreed I'm going away, and on my way out the door, they said, by the way, we know we owe you a bunch of money, but we're not going to pay you. Come and get it. And I'm like, I said, I think you forgot one of the reasons you bought our company. Well, what's that? And I said, I never fucking give up, and you're going to pay us. And so I had a full-time job during the day, which was basically fighting them. Wow. 14 months later, they did pay again. They didn't pay what they owed, but they did pay again. And in that period, I was working on the center. I was getting divorced, which is expensive and worth it. And I was working for John Chadwick and Don McLemore as the first EIR at Claritas, and I started working with Mason at that deal in that company, which we sold to AOL.
Okay.
So I was learning all this stuff while I was battling these motherfuckers.
Yeah.
And during that period, it became obvious to me that two things. One, that I was a founder. I was never going to be a corporate executive. And that I was also not going to be a traditional venture guy, right? Because in sitting with those guys, I was sitting on the other side of the table and the entrepreneur's over here and the meeting's over and we're walking out and they're tackling me because they see that I have every scar that they're ever going to get. And so I really started kind of coming to this idea that my job is to support founders because I know I own the t-shirt. And so you can't really talk to someone as a peer who doesn't have what you want. And I had gotten it, whatever that was, right? You become a hit songwriter, you sell your company, and everybody thinks you're a fucking genius. Am I a genius? No. Will I outwork you? Yes. Can I see a little bit around corners? I seem to be able to. I've also seen around corners and then run into a frickin' wall. It just happened now. It's happening to me literally as we speak. So the for me, that whole period, including helping stand up the EC and kind of looking at how public-private partnerships work and the dynamics there is to kind of land the plane at Flow. By the time I had gotten through the kind of Live Nation thing, we had stood up the center, I had gotten divorced, I had met my second wife. We kind of disappeared for a minute, went to the beach, and I had still been writing down, because, it's constant idea flow. It's several kind of books full of ideas, and we're at the beach, and I'm like, 3 piles are developing. That was a stupid idea. Well, that's an interesting one. And, what about that one? And that was Flow. And Flow was a cloak for a venture accelerator.
Okay.
So we had an agency that sat on top. It was a consulting platform. It was a high dollar. We had Google, we had Nissan, we had Under Armour, we had big blue chip clients that were paying us a lot of money. But underneath, we were developing ideas to fund. But we didn't tell anybody we were doing that. So for the first year, we basically looked like something that we weren't. We were, but we weren't.
Yeah.
And then we raised some money and funded. The goal was to start 12 companies in 18 months.
Okay.
What happened in that timeline that I would say was the end of it before it began was we launched Flow in November of 11. December 1st, our daughter Magnolia was born, and 5 days later they told my wife she'd live 1 year. And if you had known my wife, she basically said, "I'm going to beat this. Go do what you're going to do." And so we went off on that trail. So that I should have known better, but I thought I was Superman. I thought I could do anything. And so we should have never attempted what we were attempting. We got 9 companies out of the ground. By 2016, so she lived 4 years. She passed in July of 2015, and probably by mid-16, it was obvious that about half of those companies weren't going to work. And I had stepped away, and John Ingram was our biggest investor, and we had a talk, and he said, "Look, we need to fix this." And so I went back in and put a bullet in 5 companies and rejiggered the deal and converted Flow to a holding company. So now Flow is it's an entity that owns assets.
Okay.
We own interests now in, I think there are 4 left. I wished I had better news. None of them are doing very well anymore. We had several really nice exits. We returned on one deal. We returned 44 IRR.
Wow.
So we weren't wrong, but we were just trying to do too much simultaneously with this other thing that was incredibly distracting, and inevitably was fatal. And so it, again, probably the most one of the most creative and productive times of my life was kind of that late 11 to 14 era. We built the Inc. building at that point. We were finding a place to house all this stuff, and we built that crazy ass building, and right next to the homeless shelter. And everybody's like, "What are you doing? Like, that's a homeless shelter." And I'm like, "Have you been to any other city? Like, there are homeless people. There's no. What's the issue?" And that was that whole project was. Anyway, so like it was an incredibly creative time, and I had never planned to be a dad, and that has become, I think for me, my most important work is my family, and that really came out of losing my wife, and things are better. It's 10 years later. I'm remarried. I have an amazing wife who tolerates me, who's in her own right, one hell of a baller, and our daughter is thriving, and that's really for me the measurement is how's our family doing now. It's not did I get nominated, did I get an award, did I do this, did I do that. It's how are we doing at home? How am I doing in having some sense of balance? How am I contributing in a way that is meaningful, that whether there's recognition or compensation is not relevant to me. It certainly doesn't hurt. I'm happy to have it, but I'm also not tied to it like I was.
Yeah,
I guess this is called maturity.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would look at you and your trajectory and look at it as this hockey stick up, and you've won every award there possibly could in Nashville. I know because I've been in a lot of the competitions with you, and just knowing you had your daughter, your wife came down with the cancer and ended up passing away, but fought it for 4 years. People don't really see that, and something that struck me when that happened is I don't know if it was an interview you did or something shortly after, and you cocooned back in and said, I've got one thing in life
focus. Yep.
that is the most important. And that, I just would want you to know that stuck with me of just what kind of person you were, of you could have stayed on the hunt for all this success, and you took a step back and spent it to ensure that your daughter was...
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I appreciate you saying that, and what I would say is I did that far from perfectly. I can if you zoom into that timeline after she passed until call it even recently, I would say that I made many mistakes in that, but in the overall, when I look at her, how she's doing, and I look at where we are overall, I'll give myself a good grade. And I do, I remember being advised that I shouldn't do that by some people. Some of my mentors were like, you're going to pay you can't afford the professional price you're going to pay for walking away. And basically what I said is, I don't see that as a choice. If I don't have this core piece of the puzzle, what does any of the rest of this mean? And I would also tell you that it's been a struggle. There are moments that I look around and go, had I not stepped off, and I look at kind of my peer group, some of my peer group has done financially a lot better than I have. but I mean, good for them. Mm-hmm. And I made the right choice.
Yeah. Well, fast forward to today, and I guess, you're into some new things. I mean, give us an update of what are you working on now? What are you most excited about?
So I would say, in kind of this so what I'm most excited about is, I'm really excited about, my wife is doing something I think she was put here to do. She's the interim director of the Tennessee Historical Commission, and she's the federal state historic preservation officer, first female in either of those chairs ever. Whether she takes that job or not, I'm not even going to uncork that can of worms. Mm-hmm. Whatever she does, I will support. Our kid is thriving. She's, I think, exceptionally creative. She's got a real strong empathy. We are dog people. Right now we're down to 2, but we've had as many as 5. She's a great dog mom. So all that's really good. So that big bucket, I would say, good to go. I told you I moved here to be a guitar player. Mm-hmm. And I haven't ever really talked a lot about this, but I have always continued, the pursuit of what I hear in my head as a musician. And so when part of why I got into music in the first place is music saved my life. And what I mean by that is when Jim Morrison makes more sense than your parents do, and you're living in this chaos at home and music is your retreat. It's your safe place. That was what got me going on music. Guitar was a way to express it. And so when my wife passed, a bunch of my friends came around me and we started playing music just to play it. Mm-hmm. Because they knew it soothed me. And so that kind of continued. So I have this project we call Skin Knees.
Okay.
And we have been writing, recording, and releasing music every week for 3 years.
Wow.
And about a year ago, a film and television company approached us and said, we really like these masters. We'd like to sign this.
Wow.
And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I'm 58 years old and now this is happening? Now, it's going to be a river of nickels. I'm never going to it's never going to be any, who knows? Maybe, knock on wood, maybe it will be. But we're actually finishing up our second master for them. And the first one's out. And so I have continued to stretch those creative muscles. And I'm really happy with that work, and it feeds me. Mm-hmm. And then the third big bucket is continuing to work with founders, and I have been working with founders. I started, and I would put in that bucket teaching. So I also teach a class called A Minor in Reality. I taught it for Bev Keel at MTSU for 10 years, and then I recently was asked to bring it back. And I teach it now for a university on the East Coast. And they send their kids here. They send 16 kids here for a semester, and they live and work here. And I teach the entrepreneur track. There are 4 tracks, and I teach entrepreneurship. Wow. So that is, and dude, I freaking love teaching. These 20, 21, 22-year-old kids are just, I get the better end of the deal, right? I learn more than they're ever going to learn from me. Because what I teach is actually pretty simple. I just have to beat it into their heads for 16 weeks, and so they're in a way that's in the same kind of thing. That founder working with founders, mentorship, teaching, they're all the same bucket. And what that is using this notion of take what you like and leave the rest. Because I don't know everything, and certainly there are more ways to do it than my way. But I put forth what has worked for me, and if it works for you, great. And if it doesn't, that's great too. And so in that path, I added here a couple years ago, a friend of mine said to me, have you ever thought about working with nonprofit founders? And I was like, no. And he said, you should really, right? So, and this is this God thing or a spiritual thing, or call it what you want to call it thing. Within a week, I've been on the board of W.O. Smith School of Music for over 20 years, on and off that board. I love our work there. And I get a phone call from the board chair. Hey, Jonah Rabinowitz is leaving. He's been there 30 years. He's not our founder, but he's practically our founder. Would you lead the transition committee? So I say to the universe, I want to work with a nonprofit, and one shows up. And so I spent a year working on that transition. We have a new wonderful executive director. Valerie is killing it. The school is continuing to do amazing work. So I worked on that project. I work with a guy named Gooding on a project called Funding the Future. Wow. Crazy idea of making financial literacy a requirement, every state in the union, for that to be taught in high school. He's been in front of 350,000 kids over the last period of time teaching this. And that's a whole other, we could spend the entire podcast on that. You should have him in.
Yeah.
And then I worked with Will Acuff at Corner to Corner. I still work with, we maintain that relationship, but I spent about 18 months with him, helping him think through board strategy, getting his appeal correct, tuning that up. And then on the other side, working with several for-profit founders. And then here a couple, and I think we talked about this a little bit before we started. One of those is a guy named Charlie Jordan who called me, and he said, hey, and I had backed him in a previous deal that did not end well. It was COVID killed it, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, it went straight into the ground. And he said, I got the other problem. And I'm like, do tell. So I started working with him. There was a little bit of cleanup to do. I could give you the list, but I'll spare you, other than domiciled in Wyoming. Don't even get me going on why. And so I spent kind of a quarter with him, kind of just hardening his core and getting that right. And then it's healthcare, and I've never done a healthcare project, so I brought a couple of friends in, Todd Featherling and then David Clements. And by May, June, my fractional 5 hours had turned into 50.
Wow.
Because the company was growing so fast. And we are now just about a year, we're a little less than a year and a half old. And it'll actually, I think it's announced today that we've taken a large investment from a Silicon Valley investor, not a Nashville investor. And now my job is basically whatever needs to be done. I have an official title, but I sort of span the organization. And I was there, like, the company started October 1st and I started November 15th. So like, and it is, I have only seen one other company go this fast, and it was my own, right? So it's a rocket ship, and what goes up quickly can come down quickly if you're not careful. And so, Mark, honestly, in a way, my entire world has been turned 180 degrees. I'm usually the one driving the car off the cliff, and now I'm the one going, are you sure we want to do that? and yet I also recognize that my job is to be there to support the vision, and my job is to say what I think needs to be said, and then it's not my decision. And it's pretty interesting, right? It
seems like you've all grown up now.
I know it's weird.
You're maturing a little bit. I've
matured. Although if you talk to my wife, she'll tell you I haven't.
Wow. Well, Mark, thanks so much for taking us through your journey. It's been fun to watch and hear all about it. And I guess, is there anything as we wrap up, anything that maybe I didn't ask you that you want to share?
I would just say, well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate this, the fact that you're shining a light on people and exposing people to, because you've had some amazing guests. So I appreciate the invite. No, what I would say is, I think, I go back to what I said earlier, right? You think everything is fixed, and you think that that this is and will always be, and the reality is that everything's always changing. And acceptance of this idea that change is the only constant, and that if you believe that if you look across the span of time, it all matters and none of it matters. And so why not try to do the best you can, and why not jump, right?
Yeah.
And what do you really have to lose? Because what does it really matter? And
such a powerful message, Mark. Man, that's it's amazing. Yeah, you're right. What do you have to lose? You can always go back and get a job if you had to.
Yeah, I suppose.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're employable.
Yeah.
You may not.
I don't think I'm employable.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for being on the show. Thanks for all you do for the Nashville entrepreneurial startup, for all the founders you've worked with over the years, and for everything you're continuing to do. Really appreciate you being a big part of Nashville's on the rise. And
well, thank you.
You've been a huge part of it. So thank you. And thank you all for joining us today. This has been a great conversation with Mark. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. Some very good leadership and entrepreneurial lessons came out of today. Until next time, we'll see you next time on The Spark. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on this episode of The Spark from Creative Assembly. Thanks for spending time with us and exploring the minds shaping Nashville's creative future. If you're walking away more inspired, connected, or energized, that's exactly the point. A big thank you to our sponsor, Snapshot, and the incredible team behind the scenes who make this show possible. Your support fuels every conversation and keeps collaboration alive. So if you haven't already, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, stay creative, stay curious, and keep that spark.